Nostradamus and the Third Antichrist. This will only be the prophecy that's given at the end of the book, and it's published by Watkins Publishing, London. Mario Redding is the author. Part 3: The Third Antichrist, the one still to come. The Third Antichrist, quatrains. Advanced warning of the Third Antichrist. Date 2010. Nostradamus' index, date 10, century number 10. Stained with mass murder and adultery, this great enemy of humanity will be worse than any man before him, in steel, fire, water, bloody and monstrous. Prediction. This is an early portent of the coming of the Third Antichrist, echoing the warning tones of St. John the Evangelist in 1 John 2, even down to St. John's concept of the transitory lust for material things, as postulated in And the World Passes Away, and the lust thereof. Nostradamus certainly doesn't pull any punches here, describing the future depredations of the Antichrist as worse than any man before him. Summary. The Third Antichrist will be even more destructive than his two predecessors, and the results of his actions will darken and distort the history of the 21st century. The birth of the Third Antichrist, Presage 1. Date 2032. Nostradamus index date 32 and century number is 7. Though born in poverty, he will take supreme power. He will tyrannize and bankrupt his people. Raised in a 1,000-year army, he will seem lucky, though he cost both lives and money. Prediction. This is a presage to the great quatrain number 335, which would be 2035, the birth of the Third Antichrist. Nostradamus often plays these games, referring back to earlier quatrains, whose meaning he was unaware of at the time. There is much wordplay in this one, which would allow for two separate readings. However, if we acknowledge the wordplay and do not take Milan, Faverne, and Florence as literally meaning Milan, Faenza, and Florence, we come up with mille ans for Milan, 1,000 years. So Vienne for Favine, his luck, and gold florians for Florence, Dior. Place names were rarely fixed in Nostradamus and were often capitalized to draw attention to themselves and to the secret hidden inside them, as with his use of the word Hister, for example, in the famous Hitler quatrains, presaging the Second World War. Hitler was the second Antichrist. Hister, as well as meaning the Danube near which Hitler was born, can also mean hysteria, from which Hitler undoubtedly suffered. The source of the word comes from the ancient Greek hystera, meaning womb, thus reinforcing the concept of a birth. Summary. The Third Antichrist will soon be born. His birth will be a disaster for the world. The birth of the Third Antichrist, Presage 2, date 2032. Nostradamus index date is 32. The century number is 2. Milk and the blood of frogs flows in Dalmatia. Battle is joined. There is plague near Belines. Wailing will echo throughout enslaved Slovenia when the monster is born in and near Ravenna. Prediction. The second of three passages to quatrain number 335, 2035, birth of the Third Antichrist, contains a rather nice reference to one of Aesop's fables. A frog and a mouse decide to engage in single combat to settle the question of who owns the marsh they both live in. With the battle well underway and their attention concentrated elsewhere, an artful kite then swoops down and carries both combatants off. Ancient Dalmatia lies almost entirely inside modern-day Croatia, which has traditionally been fought over by the Serbs and the Croats. It hardly stretches the imagination, therefore, to imagine the Serbs as frogs and the Croats as mice, and the Muslim minority, or perhaps even the Russians, as the artful kite. Either way, battle is joined near Belene, which is probably Belene, Rimini, in Romania, situated 40 miles north of Bucharest. The monster, or third Antichrist, is then born in or near Ravenna. It may, at this point, be opposite to point out that as well as the more obvious Ravenna in Italy, there are also two Ravennas in the country, formerly known as Yugoslavia. One, Ravna Reka, is in Serbia, and the other, Ravna na Kluskom, is in Slovenia, which ties in quite nicely with line 3. Summary. The three possible sites of the third Antichrist's birth are given. Bad luck will come to those countries abutting the place. My opinion. As far as this goes, the reason why I found it interesting was the part where it talks about Aesop's fables, the frog and the mouse arguing over an area that they supposedly own, and then something else comes down, and the kite comes down and removes them from the site. And I thought that might be along the lines of basically Russia, who is kind of considered the Byzantium replacement or the Roman replacement of the Orthodox Church, and the Christian Church in the West, which are arguing right now over the area where Ukraine is, which would be very near Croatia. Obviously, the kite coming in could be the refugees coming in that is causing such a problem in the East right at the moment. Birth of the third Antichrist, Presage 3. Date 2034. Nostradamus index date is 34. Century number is 3. At the total eclipse of the sun, the monster will be seen in broad daylight. He will be misinterpreted. None will have foreseen the great cost. Prediction. In 2034, a total eclipse of the sun is expected on 20th of March, a little ahead of the sun's transit from Pisces into Aries. The sign of wars, famines, heat, droughts, and magical transformation. The eclipse will pass over Central Africa, the Middle East, including Egypt and Iran, and South Asia, including India and China. It will presage the birth of the third Antichrist, 2035, and he will be conceived in the period immediately following the eclipse, and born in the new year. We know that this is a significant passage because of the paradox hidden within the quatrain, namely that at the total eclipse of the sun, when all is darkness, the monster will be seen in broad daylight. We also know from 2032, that the monster from the Latin monstrum, meaning not only a prodigy or monster, but also an omen or a scourge, will be born either in Italy, Serbia, and Slovenia, all areas well outside the line of the eclipse. His coming will be welcomed by many with secret vested interest, but it will ultimately portend disaster. Summary. The third Antichrist is conceived in darkness during the total eclipse. He will be born into darkness too, and he will bring darkness upon the world. The birth of the third Antichrist, 2035, Nostradamus index date 35, central number 3. From deep in the western part of Europe, a child will be born to poor parents. He will seduce the multitude with his tongue. The noise of his reputation will grow in the Eastern Kingdom. Prediction. This new leader of the Eastern world will be around 35 years old by the time of the global war, referred to in quatrain number 2070. Though only from a humble background in the Western Islamic diaspora, he will manage to pull together the equivalent of the old Ottoman Empire by the seductive power of his language and threaten the dominant positions of the U.S. and China. This will result in a catastrophic nuclear war, powerful enough to disturb mountains. The worrying aspect of the quatrain lies in the word seduria, to which seduce or deceive by charm, in line 3, with its implication that this leader will be a manipulator and a fixer. and also in the word bluet in line 4, implying that his reputation will be spun as a form of narrative rather than fairly earned. It's a worrying quatrain in every respect, and echoes the presage of Adolf Hitler as the possible second Antichrist in the new famous quatrain 224. Since I cannot speak the French, I will leave this part as a space for you to read the above mentioned. The translation. With the hunger of wild beasts, they will cross the rivers. Most of the country will be against Hister. The great man will find himself paraded inside a cage of iron. The German child of the Rhine will see nothing. This is the closest Nostradamus ever came to a categorical warning to the world about a future potential Holocaust, and the subtle language he uses in 2035 echoes this with its hints of hidden depths and secret manipulations. Summary. The third Antichrist is born. The die has been cast. The future of the world, unless a miracle occurs, will be very bleak, with global warfare and ecological damage on the unprecedented scale. My observation on this is a confusion as to why it refers to the Ottoman Empire as far as the Eastern Kingdom go, when it could quite as easily be the Byzantium Empire, which would again bring Russia into it. Also, the fact that it refers here to U.S. and China being the dominant, whereas obviously Russia is interfering in Eastern Europe far more than China has so far. So my ultimate belief is that Putin is a far more bigger threat to the West than ISIS is. However, I will admit that I do not see Russia itself as being a danger as much as I do is ISIS as being, as far as maniacs, as a group of them. Putin has the power base. He has a great power base, but he does not have the fanatical support that you can get from a bunch of rabid terrorists. The mention of seduce and the fact that the person who is doing the seducing would be it would be a false narrative makes me think about the mess that we're going through in 2017, where we have created this idea that somehow Putin is this great mastermind fixer that has left us with Trump, and when in fact there's absolutely no reason, and it makes no sense, because I do not believe that anybody has yet figured out how to hack into people's minds to get them not to vote. And since there's no actual mechanical mess that's been going on, that is the only way that a collusion story works. And so where there is a narrative here that Russia is this great mastermind puppeteer, and so I again go back to Putin as being far more to be worried about, but I don't believe the narrative that he is this mastermind is really healthy for us to be jumping on. Birth of the Antichrist. Consequences. Date 2036. Nostradamus index date is 36. Century number is 9. A great king falls into the hands of a youngster. There is confusion around Easter time and a knife blow. Long-term captives and St. Elmo's fire at a time when 3 brothers wound and kill each other. Prediction. This is not the only time that Nostradamus uses the image of St. Elmo's fire. He has also used the concept of 3 brothers before. The death of the Pope of John Paul II. Both prophecies can be found in my complete prophecies of Nostradamus. In that quatrain, the 3 brothers symbolize the Magi, and given the Easter motif in this quatrain, there is every reason to suppose that he is using the same trope once again. One's instinct is to connect this quatrain with that of the preceding year, 2035, birth of the third Antichrist, and if that is the case, Nostradamus is giving us a second warning. The child born to poor parents is most definitely not the second coming, as in his case, the Magi figuratively fall out. The mention of Easter time is an obvious reference to the death of Christ, and this is further strengthened by the mention of a knife blow, which equates with the lance driven into Jesus' side. Given all this, it would appear that the great king in line one refers directly to Jesus, and that it is he, or more correctly his followers, who risk falling into the hands of the youngster, causing confusion. Summary. The third Antichrist will be declared the second coming. This will not be true. He will damage both the world and the Christian church. This is my opinion only. However, the three brothers, if it is a religious connotation, could also refer to Jewish, Christianity, and Islam. And the youngster causing confusion, I would think of as being Islam, which is a much newer religion compared to the other two. Back to the book. Book burning. Date 2053. Nostradamus Index 53. Century number is 9. Sorry. The young Nero, using 3 chimneys, will burn the living world in his ardor. Happy the person far from such practices, 3 of his own blood will watch him die. A part of a trio of quatrains. See Century 4, Quatrain 52, which is 2052, Emancipation of Muslim Women, and Century 2, Quatrain 54, which is 2054. Monsoon Rains in the Complete Prophecies of Nostradamus, which deal with the restrictive practices put into place by a fundamentalist Muslim state. The number 3 also arises twice within the quatrain and is thus significant. Pythagoras even considered it the perfect number, expressive of a beginning, a middle, and an end. In this case, we are dealing with the burning of books deemed blasphemous by the mullahs. Nero was a leader intimately associated with fire who may or may not, as Roman emperor, have ordered the burning of Rome. At the very least, or so it is alleged, he forbade the putting out of the fire because he wanted to see how Troy would look when it was in flames. But a Nero is also a generic term for any bloody-minded man, relentless tyrant, or evildoer of extraordinary savagery. Could this young Nero be the new 21-year-old man Nostradamus speaks of in Century 7, Quatrain 32, which would be 2032, Birth of the Antichrist, Presage 1? If so, the number 3 will exactly describe his life and its effect, for as we know from the Bible, the enemies of men are threefold: the world, the flesh, and the devil. The Quatrain 2 is in 3 stages: the young Nero with his 3 chimneys, the mature Nero who burns books, and the dead Nero, killed by 3 of his own blood. There are, of course, 3 Antichrists, too: Napoleon, Hitler, and the strangely persuasive gentleman whose birth is announced in Century 3, Quatrain 35, Birth of the Third Antichrist. Summary. This is a plea against censorship and in favor of freedom. The third Antichrist is building his power base by playing on his followers' greed for power over others, just as Adolf Hitler manipulated his followers through the gift of favors and of political and civical office. The young Nero, I'm not sure where that leads. However, going back to the 3 chimneys, I still wonder if since most of this has to do with religion, I have to wonder whether or not it could be referring to the 3 different religions by using them to basically destroy the world, burning up. And of course, the reference to the happy person from such practices could be a reference to America, both South and North America, who are far from that mess. The 3 of his own blood will watch him die. Again, also might be referring to America, who's basically right now just sitting on its butt, looking while there's basically a war going on between Islam and the two branches, Jews and uh, the Christian Church, which also could be separated into the normal, the Western Christian Church and the Orthodox Christian Church would be represented by Russia. Worldwide epidemic. Date 2062. Index date 62, century number 2. Mobbus, though dead, returns. Both man and beast suffer terribly. Then all of a sudden, vengeance arrives. Much blood, thirst, hunger when the comet passes. Mobbus is one of the cryptograms most beloved of Nostradamus' commentators. It has been transliterated into just about everything, ranging in ascending order of lunacy from Saddam Hussein via Da Vinci-esque mirror writing to self-abuse, the Magus, Magabesios, Anabarbus, Thurbo, Majas, Abu Nidal, Abu Abbas, and even as far as poor old Raymond Mabus, former governor of Mississippi and U.S. ambassador to Saudi Arabia, 1994 and 1996, who found himself in imminent danger of being tarred as either the third Antichrist or, worse still, one of his victims, thanks to the efforts of a mixed bag of Nostradamian conspiracy nuts. To be fair, no one claims to have the definitive answer, and many of these suggestions are put forward with tongue in solidly in cheek. In point of fact, Nostradamus' coining of the name Mobbus probably stems from something as commonplace as his knowledge of his close contemporary, the Flemish painter John Gesart, 1470-1532, who was known as Mabuse, after his birthplace at Maubeuge in France. There may be a connection, too, with the legend of Queen Mab, the fairy's midwife of dreams, the title of queen referring not to a legal background, but to the simple fact that she was a woman, equating with the still current Scots word quinine, and the no longer current Saxon word quin. So, could Mobbus simply mean the time of dreams? If that is the case, then the quatrain takes on a haunting, doomed quality, part nightmare and part hallucination. Whatever meaning we construe from it, 2062 sounds like a particularly bad time to be alive. Summary. An epidemic that was thought to be defeated flares up again, killing many more people than before. In hindsight, I've been also trying to figure out Mobbus, but I do like this version. At first, if we're to read this, it says Mobbus, which would be dreams, though dead, returns. Both man and beast suffer terribly, which could be basically, we've been dreaming of a world order, and now it looks like it's dead, but it came back with a vengeance, which we're all fighting at the moment as to whether or not we're going to represent ourselves or we're going to be swallowed up in the world government idea of things like Eastern, like Europe's going through right at the moment. So anyway, that's a possibility. There's going to be a lot of vengeance, things like that, which obviously America's facing at the moment because the left has definitely have lots of problems, and they seem quite willing to embrace those that are wanting to kill them in the first place. So I don't understand where that comes from. But anyway, as for the comet passes, I really at this moment don't have anything to add to that. All right, thanks.